I'm going to show you how to retopologize an arm. So I'm actually first going to load it into Vox Sculpting. And I'm going to load it in as a surface layer rather than as a voxel layer. And this will mean that it stays as a triangulated surface and it doesn't become voxels. I'm going to hold down Control to rotate it. Let's just make sure it's on the grid. Good. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that I import without voxelizing, and I'm going to apply it. So the next step is to actually go into the retop room, retopology object here, and I have my vox tree here, and I can hide or ghost different sections of the vox tree. I've only got the one for the moment, so I'm just going to stick to the retop objects. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the strokes tool to go in and mark out where I think the key sections of the model are going to be. So if I click and drag from outside of the model across the model, it will put a loop all the way across the model. And what I want to do is check that those loops are correct. So I'm not happy with that one. That one needs to come down here a bit. It's better. If you find that a loop's not quite right, it's okay. You can always slide the loops later. So I'm going to go across here, a couple of loops in there. This bit's going to get messy, but I usually don't bother to clean things up until I've actually seen what it's done. Right. Okay, that looks pretty good. The next lines that I need to draw are those that flow laterally along the arm. So with steady stroke on, I'm going to draw this line. And then I just need to repeat, and I'm going to go around the arm. Not going to worry too much about the density of the quads yet. And you can see I'm making sure that I start outside of that first loop and end beyond the last loop, because that's how it determines what mesh to make. It's a bit trickier when you get to the underside of the arm, and what I'm actually going to do is just stop part the way so that you can see what happens if I don't complete. It also is going to save me a little bit of faffing around, because what I can do is I can just add that geometry rather than trying to negotiate all the way around. I'm going to pick that one up and move it. There we go. Add another loop in here. Okay, so I've tried to kind of sketch what I consider to be the important contours. Let's add another loop down here that doesn't reach all the way, and it's going to stop at the elbow. Okay, I think that's probably about it. Oh, I'm just going to shift that point. You can just grab points and move them. I'm reasonably happy with that. So once you've got your strokes tool and you've got everything reasonably in place, you just hit enter on the keyboard and it will go and generate a low poly version of the model. If you've got your retop group selected, you can just subdivide it to add more geometry. And yep, that's a pretty good sleeve. I'm actually just going to tidy this up a little bit more before So I'm going to go in and delete that poly because I don't like it. And I'm going to be using the move tool. The move tool is context sensitive depending on how big your radius is, because if it's nice and small, you can pick up your vertices, you can hover over an edge, or you can hover over a face. If it's too small or too big, it doesn't necessarily detect them quite so well. So I just want to adjust this contour, and then I'm going to add a point here and probably a point there to capture that. Not happy there, I want an extra loop, so I'm going to split ring and just click to add a loop, and that's pretty good. Again, on the other side, I don't want that, and I will add extra geometry. So I've got an end on there, which I know about. I'm definitely going to need another loop around the elbow, so I'm going to split that as well. You tend, depending on the philosophy, a lot of people just add loops into elbows. I like to add loops and then optimize so that you've got less geometry inside than you have outside. So you get more triangles on the outside so that they can stretch, because that's where the bend is. Let's just add another subdiv and one there, I think. Let's check what that looks like when it gets subdivided. That's pretty neat. I'm quite happy with that. It does need a bit of tidying up though. I'm going to delete edges. If I hold down Control, I can select a loop and I can just click to get rid of it. And I've probably got a couple here that I can lose. You can also slide the edges around. So again, hit Control and you can slide a loop. And that's pretty neat for spacing. I've got a stray engon, or rather a couple of triangles there, a couple of triangles there. I think I can lose the tricep loop as well, and I'm just going to shift that over. Again, I'm not quite happy with that. Let's move it so that it's a bit cleaner. Okay, that's pretty much the arm done. That wasn't too difficult. The next thing I want to do is I want to go back into the sculpt room because I want to be able to hide different parts of the model. So what I'm going to use to do this is surface hide. I'm just going to check to make sure I turn off ignore back faces, and I'm just going to cut this section off. That will hide it. If you hold Control, you can make a section reappear. So I just want to be able to look at the hand. Let's go back to the retop room, and you can see that most of the upper arm has disappeared. This makes it easier to select or move the geometry around when you've got fingers and arms in the way. The other thing I'm going to do is hit F on the keyboard, and what that will do is it will set the focus, which is basically where we're rotating around. Again, we want to be focused on the hand, so it's just much easier to do it that way. Now I can go in and I'm going to do pretty much the same thing for the fingers. So I'm going to be using the strokes mode, and I'm just going to come across here. So I've gone for the top of the finger, the knuckle and the nail. And then I just want to draw where the geometry is going to go. So it's along here. We hit enter. Okay, that's pretty good. It's a bit low poly, so I can always split that. That's better. Do the next one. Okay, I'm going to split along there. Oh, we got some. Has it capped it? Oh yeah, it's capped it. Let's get rid of that. Still a bit broke. Okay, that's better. Is that a stray face? No. Okay. Sometimes it's just quicker to manually. Let's show how to hide. So I need to be in lasso mode. And let's just go in and hide that bit. Let's go back to the retop room. Really good. Needs another loop. So the next step is to get the topology on the hand reasonably good so that we don't end up running all of these loops up the arm. So the next stage is I'm just going to use points and faces to connect. So in other words, if we just move these edges around so that they face one another, we can see that rather than running this geometry into the arm, which would probably create unnecessary triangles, what we can do instead is just go in and connect them. So that means that we've effectively got rid of these two loops and they loop back on one another. We still have this edge and that will run, but that's okay. Let's do the same on the underside. Whoop, that's not a quad. That's a quad. So I've completed the hand mainly using points and faces and the quad tool, and then I've subdivided the hand. Geometry. Then what I've done is I've unhid all of the high poly, and then I've used the move tool here just to rearrange the geometry to improve the mesh flow. So if I look at the retop objects, at this stage we're ready to go in and arc in the seams. So I'm going to use the edge loops for this. So if you use edge loops, it will go in and it will select the loop. So if I click this, we can see that it's gone part way around. I haven't quadded here, so it's not connected that. Once you section off an area, you'll see that what will happen is it will separate away. So I now have two islands. This upper arm, I need a seam in order to be able to make it split. I think that's probably a pretty good line there, so I'm going to click that. And you can see that we now have a pretty good representation of the arm. And what we're looking for is we're looking for an even grey, not too red, not too blue. So blue is areas where there is less detail and red is where there is more detail. So that's the arm done, just with a couple of clicks. The hand is going to be pretty complicated because it's fairly manifold. But my edge loops should be pretty good on this. So I'm just going to go and select those fingers. There and there and there. I really like the way it color coordinates so that you can see that you've snipped a finger off. So I know some people prefer a glove mode. I just tend to take fingers off and do it this way. Let's pick that one and that one. There we go. That's the thumb. And then I'm left with the palm, which needs to get split, which I think I will go along here. That is pretty good. It's still not split because I've got to separate between the fingers. And now we've got two sections. So that's the palm and that's the top of the hand. Then we need to split the fingers. These, again, because I made them with the strokes tool, they should have fairly clean edge loops. So there we go. Then we have a bunch of fingers. If you've got a seam in the wrong place, you can control click and it will just join it back together again. Okay, so I've got hands and I've got fingers. If I don't want the fingers to be in two pieces, I can also go into mark seams and control click. So I can join that back together. So that's one of the fingers. Okay, so I now have each of the fingers. I have the palm. And again, what I could do is join the hand. So I've got the top of the hand and the bottom of the hand. I could join them together by control clicking and just seeing how well they fit back together again. I think they're going to fit pretty well, actually. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's fairly grey. Seams are done. So the next job is just to pack them. And if I hover over, we can see, oh, I've missed something. What would this be? Let's go into faces mode and just click. And I've missed the thumb. It's still a big long sock. Let's go to mark seams. Where do I want the seam? Probably going to run it along here just as much. Right, okay. I'm not going to worry about packing because I really want to bake and make sure that everything comes out reasonably clean. So you can see from the UV layout that we have some blue areas. So these will have low detail. We have red areas. These will have high detail. Again, it's more intense on the fingers, but what I will tend to do is do a first pass where I will paint, and then I will see if we got any kind of artifacting, and then if necessary I will readjust. In terms of quads though, and squares, so squares on the model, they look pretty good. I'm not overly worried. I can see that we've got squares around the fingertips, so I'm pretty sure that's going to be quite clean. Okay, so we're ready to bake. So I'm going to go in and I'm baking with normal map per pixel. So I'm just going to go into the bake mode. Now we can preview the outer shell and the inner shell. So the inner shell needs to be inside the object. As you can see, if we look down here, you can see we're inside. And if I look at the outer shell, most of it's on the outside, but we've got a couple of areas whereby it's not quite high enough. So these buttons here push and pull the mesh so that you can move the cage in different ways. So with this one, we can increase the depth of scaling. So I can just go in and I should be able to paint, but I'm moving the vertices, only the vertices that I'm painting. So I can go around and push these out. If you want a general solution, you've got the inside and the outside depth, and if I just push the outside depth, the whole thing will push out. Just going to fix these bits here. Right. Okay, that looks fairly clean. There's a bit missing there. Okay, let's bake it. I'm just going to use a 512 to begin with. I've got mine set up for Unreal Engine, so I have a preset already, and away it goes. And then we can go to the paint room. I'm going to hide my Vox tree, and you can see that we're now looking at the low poly. I can see a little couple of marks there where I have clearly missed. Now I can either paint those out or I can do a rebake. There, that's one of them. Let's get a nice big ugly brush color. Let's have a red brush. Go and paint. So there's a piece there. There's a piece there. There's a piece there. Where else have we got? And there's a piece up there. There's a piece there as well. So if I go back to the retop room, I can see where I've marked on the model. So I know that I need to go back and push these out a bit more. So let's go and bake again. Let's have a look at the Vox tree. Just make sure that that's not hidden. Don't want to be in wireframe mode either. Bake per pixel. Ah, yes, quite clearly see it now. Down here. And up there, up round that bend. That looks a little high. I'm going to control to lower that down. Go. Let's do it again. Let's switch this to a 1K texture this time. Let's go back into our paint room. Let's hide the high poly. And we now have a low poly.